You ever have one of those days where you just feel like kind of blah, like you're just going through the motions, but that inner spark is just like missing?
Oh, yeah.
I had a day like that recently. I was questioning everything, like my career choices and my relationships, even what cereal I had for breakfast.
Wow.
It really got me thinking about how important self-love is, not just for like feeling good, but for how we show up in like everything.
Yeah, it's funny how we can think of self-love as like fluffy or like self-indulgent
Right.
when it's really the foundation for like everything, our relationships, our work, even our health.
Totally. And that's why we're doing this deep dive today. We're looking at this transcript of a podcast episode about using affirmations to grow self-love.
What I think is so interesting about this one is how much it focuses on love being like an inside thing.
Okay.
It pushes back on the idea that we need someone else to complete us. It says we already have all we need like inside ourselves.
I love that. It's like that saying, you are enough.
Yes, exactly.
But this goes beyond just like nice sayings. It gets into practical steps to tap into that inner well of love. And while the original focus is on romantic love, this applies to everything, right? Careers, friendships, even like dealing with your inner critic.
For sure. The principles are universal. This source really focuses on self-worth as the starting point. It says that seeing our own value is like the key to attracting love both from others and from ourselves. But how does that really work? There's something in psychology that shows this connection between how we see ourselves and what we experience.
That's such a good question. Like, it makes sense, but I'd love to hear you talk about it from like a scientific view.
Okay, well, psychology research has found that how we see ourselves is like a filter for how we understand the world around us.
Ah, right.
If we think we aren't worthy or lovable,
Mm.
we tend to find situations and relationships that like confirm that belief.
Oh, interesting.
It's like we're subconsciously trying to prove ourselves right.
Oh, wow, that's so true. So it's not just about getting love from others, but also about how we treat ourselves, right? If we don't think we're worthy of love, we're more likely to like self-sabotage or not take care of our needs.
Exactly. And that's where using affirmations comes in. This source highlights those positive statements as a way to reprogram our thinking.
Okay. I've heard a lot about affirmations, but honestly, I've always been kind of skeptical. Do they actually work? And how can just saying phrases actually change our self-perception?
It might sound a little out there at first,
Huh.
but there's actually a neuroscience basis for it.
Really?
Yeah, our brains are super adaptable because of something called neuroplasticity. This means our thought patterns can change through practice, even really deep ones. Affirmations work by making new neural pathways. They make the connections related to positive self-beliefs stronger.
So it's like we're rewiring our brains for self-love. I'm starting to see how this is more than just like wishful thinking.
Exactly. And this source gives some great examples of affirmations like, I am worthy of love just as I am, or love flows to me effortlessly and abundantly.
Those are strong statements. I can see how even if you don't totally believe them at first, saying those over and over could start to shift how you talk to yourself. But it's not just about saying affirmations without thinking, right? What are some tips from the source for making them really stick?
Consistency is key. The source recommends practicing every day, writing the affirmations down, even looking in the mirror and saying them like you really mean it.
Mirror work. That's interesting. I can see how that might feel weird at first, but I guess it forces you to actually face those negative thoughts.
Exactly. It's about breaking those automatic thought patterns and putting something empowering in their place.
Now that we get the power of affirmations, let's explore how they actually work in our brains.
Yeah, it's like working out a muscle in your brain. The more we practice choosing those positive affirmations, the stronger those pathways get.
Right.
It's like we're training our brains to actually believe that we are worthy.
That makes sense. But the source also says it's not enough to just say the words. We have to like embody them too, right?
Exactly. The source suggests using visualization, like picturing yourself surrounded by love, feeling confident and radiant.
Okay.
It makes the emotions we're trying to grow feel more real.
So we're not just changing how we think, but also how we feel. That's pretty amazing. But it must take time to move from self-doubt to self-love, especially when negative thoughts keep coming up. What does the source say about dealing with that inner critic?
That's such an important point. The source acknowledges that inner critic, that voice that's always whispering doubts.
Yeah.
But instead of trying to silence it, which usually doesn't work, it says we should learn to challenge those thoughts.
Challenge them? But how?
Well, when you get a negative thought, don't just accept it as true.
Okay.
Ask yourself, is this really true? What proof do I have for this belief?
Hmm.
This helps you step back from those automatic thoughts and look at them more objectively.
So instead of letting the thoughts spiral, we pause, ask if they're even true, and then try to reframe them positively.
Exactly.
That's a great strategy. It probably takes practice to catch those thoughts before they take over, though.
Absolutely. It's like learning any new skill. Mindfulness and self-awareness make it easier to recognize and change those negative thought patterns.
And that's where those affirmations come in, right? By saying those positive statements, we're fighting those negative thoughts with positive ones.
Exactly. And this source goes even deeper. It says that self-love isn't just about feeling good, but that it affects our relationships and well-being too.
So we've talked about how to do self-love, but I'm curious about the why. How does self-love actually make our lives better?
Well, there's more and more research in positive psychology showing that people with higher self-compassion are more likely to do good things for others,
Wow.
like helping, volunteering, and donating.
So self-love makes us better people. That's amazing. But what about our personal relationships? How does self-love change how we are with partners, friends, and family?
When we love and respect ourselves, we show others how to treat us. We're less likely to put up with being disrespected because we know we're worth more.
Yeah.
And when we're confident, others tend to respect and admire us more.
It's like we build a shield of self-worth that blocks negativity and brings in good stuff.
I like that.
That's powerful. But let's be real. Life has its ups and downs. How does self-love help us handle those tough times?
That's where resilience comes in. Self-love gives us inner strength to bounce back. When we believe in ourselves and our ability to overcome challenges, we're not easily defeated.
So instead of falling apart, we can use that inner strength to keep going.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not just about surviving hard times, but thriving in all parts of life. Self-love helps us chase our passions, set boundaries, and make choices that match our values.
It's like self-love gives us the guts to be ourselves, to go after what we want, and build a life that really reflects us. I love that. Let's go back to the source for a second. One thing that really stuck with me was the idea of love being a reflection.
Ah, yes. The source really emphasizes that the love we give comes back to us.
Right. But how does that work in real life? Is it just vibes, or is there something more concrete?
It works on different levels. Our actions are one way to think about it.
Okay.
When we're loving and kind, we tend to get those same things back from others.
Right.
Second, we set the mood for our interactions.
So if we're always negative, we attract more negativity. But if we focus on love and gratitude, we'll experience that instead.
Exactly. There's also a more subtle energy level that it works on. Some people believe our thoughts and emotions create vibrations that attract similar ones back.
Okay, that's where I get a little lost. Is there any science behind this idea of energy vibrations, or is it more of a spiritual thing?
It's a cool idea. It's hard to prove scientifically,
Uh,
but there's definitely something to the power of our thoughts and emotions to shape our reality. Even if we can't measure it, I think most of us have felt how our mood can change how we see things and how people react to us.
That's true. When I'm feeling good and positive, people seem to be drawn to me. But when I'm down, it seems like I attract more negativity.
Exactly. So whether we call it vibes, energy, or just our mindset, there's definitely something to be said for cultivating a positive and loving inner state.
Okay, I'm on board. But being realistic, self-love can be tough. We all have baggage, insecurities, past hurts that make it hard to fully embrace ourselves. What does the source say about dealing with those inner critics?
That's so important. The source says we need to let go of limiting beliefs. The negative stories we tell ourselves, like,
Yeah.
I'm not good enough, I'm unlovable, I'll never succeed. They block us from real self-love.
I know those stories all too well. They can be sneaky, whispering doubts and making us less confident. How do we actually quiet those inner critics? It's not like we can just tell them to be quiet.
It takes time. The source recommends challenging those limiting beliefs. When you have a negative thought pop up,
Yeah.
ask yourself, is this really true? What evidence supports this belief? What would a more loving and compassionate view be?
So it's about noticing the thoughts, questioning them, and then choosing to reframe them more positively. That's a great idea. It probably takes practice to catch those thoughts before they get out of hand.
It does. It's like building a muscle. The more we practice mindfulness and self-awareness, the easier it is to see and redirect those negative thought patterns. And that's where those affirmations we talked about can be so helpful. By saying positive things that affirm our worth, we're training our brains to believe those truths.
It's like we're swapping those old negative tapes for new positive ones. The more we play those new tapes, the louder they get, and eventually they drown out the self-doubt.
Exactly. And here's another interesting thing from the source. The host talks about visualization.
Okay.
Imagine yourself surrounded by love, feeling confident, and experiencing great relationships.
Uh-huh.
By creating these pictures in your mind, you're planting seeds in your subconscious, setting things up for those experiences to happen in real life.
That's powerful. It's like we're making a blueprint for the life we want, one loving piece at a time. And speaking of building, I'm realizing that self-love isn't a one-time fix. It's an ongoing thing, a journey of learning and growing.
I love that analogy.
Hmm.
And that's where the source's message about consistency is so important.
Right.
Self-love isn't a destination, it's a practice.
Right.
It's about those small daily choices to take care of our minds, bodies, and souls. It's about treating ourselves with the same love we give to others.
It's like we're building a loving relationship with ourselves. One kind thought, one empowering action, one moment of self-care at a time. And that's a relationship worth working on, don't you think?
Totally.
Okay.
It really makes me think about how this whole conversation links back to what we were saying earlier about the source's idea of love being something we already have inside.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting how we often look for love and feeling good enough in the wrong places, like achievements, relationships, things we buy, when the love that really lasts and makes us happy comes from inside.
It's like trying to fill a hole with stuff that can't actually satisfy us.
Exactly. And this idea isn't new. You know, it's been around for ages in different cultures and spiritual traditions.
Yeah.
The idea of self-love is this timeless wisdom that people have recognized for centuries. That makes me curious. How has this idea of self-love as an inner resource been expressed in other cultures or traditions?
Well, many Eastern philosophies like Buddhism and Hinduism really emphasize self-compassion and acceptance as ways to reach enlightenment.
Okay.
The idea is that by building a loving and non-judgmental relationship with ourselves, we can move past suffering and find true inner peace.
That makes sense. It makes me think about how hard we are on ourselves for not being perfect, when really those imperfections are what make us unique and human.
I agree. Embracing our flaws is a big part of self-love.
Yeah.
It's about realizing we're all a work in progress, and that's okay.
So it's not about trying to be perfect, but about accepting who we are right now.
Yeah, exactly. And that acceptance helps us grow and change.
Okay.
When we're kind to ourselves, we make space to learn and evolve.
This conversation has been so insightful. I'm starting to see self-love differently. It's not just about feeling good. It's about building inner strength and resilience so we can be our best selves in the world.
And that's the amazing thing about it. Self-love is empowering. It gives us the courage to go after our dreams, set healthy boundaries, and make choices that match what we believe in.
It's like we're finally allowing ourselves to be who we truly are without needing to apologize for it.
Exactly. And that authenticity draws the right people and opportunities to us.
So we talked about the benefits of self-love for ourselves, but I'm curious about how it affects our relationships with others. How does self-love change how we interact with people?
When we love and respect ourselves, we tend to attract people who treat us the same way. It's like we're setting the bar for how we should be treated.
And when we don't value ourselves, we might put up with things from others that we wouldn't if we had more self-worth.
Exactly. Self-love is crucial for having healthy relationships. It helps us set boundaries, say what we need, and build respect and appreciation.
That makes total sense. It's like self-love is the foundation for all our relationships.
Absolutely. And remember, self-love isn't selfish. It's actually the opposite. When we take care of ourselves first, we have more to give to others.
It's like that saying, you can't pour from an empty pitcher. If we're always giving to others and not ourselves, we'll have nothing left.
Exactly. Taking care of ourselves is important for our own well-being and for our relationships.
Right.
It lets us be our best for the people we love.
So by putting our needs first, we're not being selfish, but more generous and loving towards others.
Precisely.
It's a win-win. This deep dive has really shown me that self-love is the key to a more fulfilling and meaningful life. It affects everything from how we feel to our relationships and even how we impact the world.
And the best part,
Yeah.
self-love is for everyone. It's a journey we can all start no matter what we've been through or where we are now.
I love that. So to wrap things up, what are some main takeaways our listeners can use to build more self-love in their lives?
Well, like we discussed, using affirmations, reflecting on ourselves, and putting self-care first are great tools.
Okay.
We can also work on changing limiting beliefs, being grateful, and forgiving ourselves and others.
Those are awesome tips. And remember, self-love is a process. It's not something we achieve, but something we keep working on and growing with.
I agree. It's a journey worth taking. As we end this deep dive, I want to encourage our listeners to really embrace the power of self-love.
Yes.
Remember, you are worthy of love, you can do amazing things, and you have the power to create a life that truly lights you up.
This has been such a great conversation. Thanks for joining me to explore self-love.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, be kind to yourselves, celebrate your progress, and never stop believing in how amazing you are. Until next time, keep shining bright.